Good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. I have the following statement by the Secretary General on Cyclone Idai. And again, this is in the name of the Secretary General. I'm deeply saddened by the loss of life and heart-wrenching images of human suffering we have seen since Cyclone Idai hit Beira, Mozambique, on the night of the 14th of March, and then swept into Malawi and Zimbabwe, resulting in the massive disaster. I've been encouraged by the efforts of national and international search and rescue teams who've been working around the clock to save thousands of lives under dangerous and challenging conditions. These heroes have not only rescued families off roofs, but are also delivering food, water purification tablets, and other life-saving humanitarian assistance to survivors after communities have literally been washed away. The UN and humanitarian partners are scaling up the response with initial funding from generous donors. The UN has already released $20 million to kickstart the response. However, far greater international support is needed. With crops destroyed in the breadbasket of Mozambique, more people are at risk of food insecurity in all three countries, and homes, schools, hospitals, and roads lie in ruin. What is needed now are funds to support the response in the days, weeks, and months to come. We must all stand in solidarity with the people of Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. I would like to make a strong appeal to the international community to step up support. Again, that statement was in the name of the Secretary General, and over near the door there are some copies as well of a statement by Inga King, the President of the Economic and Social Council. And UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Fore is in Mozambique's Beira to see the impact of Cyclone Idai on children and families there. She said that the situation on the ground remains critical, with there being no electricity or running water. Ms. Fore noted that hundreds of thousands of children need immediate help, and that the priority right now is to give them shelter, food, water, education, and protection. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that more than 1.8 million people need assistance in Mozambique. At least 242 people have died, and more than 1,400 others have been injured, according to the government. UNICEF is supporting WFP with food distribution and is also providing water purification supplies and is helping to set up spaces to protect children and provide psychosocial support. And in just a short while from now, the Secretary General will visit the Islamic Cultural Center of New York, and he will visit the mosque and intends to speak to the press while he is there. He will discuss the attack last week on two mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, and will say that around the world, we have seen ever-rising anti-Muslim hatred, anti-Semitism, hate speech, and bigotry. And he will make a call to reaffirm the sanctity of all places of worship and the safety of all worshippers who visit revered sites in a spirit of compassion and tolerance. We'll share the transcript of what he says to the press there, and video coverage of his visit will be available later today. We have the following statement attributable to the spokesperson for the Secretary General on the capsizing of a ferry near Mosul, Iraq. The Secretary General is saddened by the tragic loss of lives after a passenger ferry capsized yesterday in the Tigris River near the Iraqi city of Mosul. The Secretary General extends his condolences to the families of the victims, the government, and people of Iraq, and wishes the injured a speedy recovery. The tragedy happened on the Nowruz holiday when many across Iraq were celebrating the first day of spring. The Secretary General conveys the solidarity of the United Nations with the Republic of Iraq, as well as its readiness to support national assistance efforts as needed. And just a few minutes ago, we issued the following statement. The Secretary General was deeply saddened to learn about the loss of life and injuries caused by the explosion at a chemical plant in Yancheng City, Jiangsu Province of China. He extends his sincere condolences to the families of the victims and wishes those injured a speedy recovery. The Secretary General expresses his heartfelt sympathies to the people and government of China. Horst Kohler, the Secretary General's personal envoy for Western Sahara, spoke to reporters in Geneva today after the second roundtable meeting on Western Sahara. He said that this meeting demonstrated that all delegations are aware that many people are placing hopes in this process, with the cost of this conflict being far too high. Mr. Kohler read a joint communique agreed on by all four delegations, which said that they welcomed the new momentum created by the first roundtable meeting in December of last year. The delegations also said they held in-depth discussions on how to achieve a mutually acceptable political solution to the question of Western Sahara that is realistic, practicable, enduring, based on compromise, just, lasting, which will provide for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara in accordance with Security Council Resolution 2440. There was consensus that the whole Maghreb would greatly benefit from a solution to the question of Western Sahara. Delegations also recognized that the region had a special responsibility to contribute to a solution. They also welcomed Mr. Kohler's intention to invite them to meet again in the same format. You can read the full transcript on our website. The UN envoy for Syria, Geert Peterson, concluded his visit to Syria and has been in Lebanon, where he met with President Michel Aoun, Prime Minister Saad Hariri, and Speaker Nabi Berri. Today, the special envoy is visiting Syrian refugees in shelters in Mount Lebanon. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more measles cases continue to be recorded in the Philippines, with nearly 23,000 cases, including 333 deaths officially reported so far. This marks a 385% increase compared to the same period last year. Over half of the cases involve children under the age of 5. The World Health Organization has labeled the overall risk of the current outbreak as high, but there are signs that the outbreak is beginning to slow down, in part due to stepped-up vaccination efforts. UNICEF is helping to procure 6 million additional vaccines, and together with WHO, will deploy personnel to support the national vaccination campaign. Today is World Water Day, and this year's theme is Leaving No One Behind, which is the central promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In his message on the day, the Secretary General stressed that water is a human right and that nobody should be denied access to it. He noted that today, 2.1 billion people live without safe water due to factors such as economic status, gender, ethnicity, religion, and age, and that by 2030, some 700 million people worldwide could be displaced by intense water scarcity. As we strive to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, he said that we must value water resources and ensure their inclusive management if we are to protect and use this vital resource sustainably for the benefit of all people. His full message is available on our website. Once I'm done, you'll hear from Monica Grayley, the spokeswoman for the President of the General Assembly, and at 12:30 p.m., Ambassador Basha Jafari, permanent representative of the Syrian Arab Republic to the United Nations, will brief reporters at the Security Council stakeout. And on Monday, our guest will be Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of UNICEF, and Mark Lowcock, Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, and they will brief you on their recent visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's it for me. Yes, Masood, your hand's been up for quite some time. Yes, you can get to go.
Okay. Thank you. Farhan, the United States recognition of Israeli occupation of Golan Heights, is it also, it cannot be recognized as international community? Where does it stand? And what is the Secretary General's opinion on this?
Well, we don't have any comment on the tweet that we saw yesterday. But if you're asking what the UN policy on Golan Heights is, that it's very clear. It's the policy reflected in the resolutions of the Security Council and the relevant resolutions as well of the General Assembly, and they refer very clearly to it.
So basically, it remains, so-called occupied land for now.
The status of Golan has not changed. If you'll recall, our special envoy on Syria, Geert Peterson, briefed the Security Council just a few weeks ago on February 28th, and he took up that issue there. And you can see what his comments are, but certainly the status of Golan, it remains as it was. Yes.
I have one follow-up and just a question on a different subject. The follow-up on the Golan Heights. I know you said it was just a tweet, but President Trump has made it clear his intention to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Given what you've said about the existing position of the UN and the existing Security Council resolutions, does the Secretary General believe this would be a clear breach by the United States, a permanent member of Security Council resolutions, and as such a breach of international law?
Well, as you well know from the many times we've brought up the topic of Security Council resolutions in the past, it's up to the members of the Security Council themselves to determine whether their resolutions have been breached or not. And so we'll leave that matter in their hands. The resolutions are, of course, unchanged, and we can show we can turn you to them, but they are what they are, and our policies have not changed on that regard.
And the other question is on Yemen and what you had to say the other day. You talked about some progress. You talked about the Regional Coordination Committee meeting soon. Do you have any update on the timing of that meeting, number one, with regard to Hodeidah? And then the other aspect, which we've forgotten for a bit, is the talks about the prisoner exchange. Any update on that?
When we have those updates, we'll certainly let you know. We are hopeful that we can get a meeting of the Redeployment Coordination Committee soon to endorse the progress that we've seen in recent days on the withdrawals from Hodeidah. Meanwhile, there's nothing new to report about the prisoner exchange. It is welcome that the sort of cessation of hostilities we had in those areas is holding, and that the parties continue to be willing to meet with each other around the table. We'll have to see what more we can get in terms of concrete results about that.
Can I push you on soon over the weekend?
Oh, we'll announce it as soon as we possibly can. Yes, please.
A UN human rights team went to Venezuela on March 15, if I'm not mistaken, and they're scheduled to come back today. Is there any update on the mission, and did they come back to New York?
Well, the team actually will go back to the offices of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is in Geneva. They have been able to go about their work. As far as we're aware, they were able to make the meetings that they had scheduled. So we hope that they will be able to report back on what their findings were. Yes.
I was going to ask you about the Gaza crossing. I've been asking you strangulation of Gaza by the Israelis and the Egyptians. Do you have any update on that situation now?
There's nothing particularly new to say. Next week, I believe Mr. Mladenov will give one of his periodic briefings on the situation in the Palestinian territories to the Security Council, and we can provide some further factual information. But the situation remains basically the same as it was when you last asked a few days ago. And with that, have a good weekend, everyone.